The most effective way to start your own business might begin by purposefully becoming a terrible employee. It's called the firing level protocol. The execution is simple. You calibrate your daily corporate output to sit exactly 1 millimeter above the line where your boss would actually fire you. A traditional corporate job operates on a very specific mathematical trade. In exchange for a predictable paycheck, you forfeit your peak cognitive hours, your creative energy, and the vast majority of your waking life to a system specifically engineered to cap your financial upside. This chart shows the global reality of that trade. According to recent workforce data, 85% of employees worldwide are actively disengaged. That massive slice represents millions of people trading their finite time on Earth for the mere illusion of safety. This brings us to a concept called dondo, which completely inverts how we calculate danger. We are taught that striking out on your own is a massive gamble. But under the dondo framework, renting out your life to a corporation is the ultimate risk, because time is the one asset you can never buy back. This philosophy is heavily utilized by Mohnish Pabrai. He used this exact mental model to build a billion-dollar investment firm. His entire empire rests on a single rule: heads I win, tails I don't lose much. When you apply that rule to a 9-to-5 job, the math falls apart. Choosing to stay in a system designed to strictly limit your potential wealth while simultaneously bleeding away your most valuable asset is the most dangerous bet you can make. To understand how wealth is actually built without taking massive risks, we have to look at a transaction from 1626. That year, Dutch settlers purchased the island of Manhattan from the Native American inhabitants for $23. Looking at this historical depiction of the exchange, the standard consensus is that the Native Americans were thoroughly swindled, trading prime real estate for a handful of trinkets. The Rule of 72 states a 7% return doubles money every 10 years. Applying this to $23, early growth is slow, but compounding uninterrupted for 400 years creates a violent trajectory, reaching $23 trillion, vastly more than Manhattan's undeveloped land. The actual size of the starting capital doesn't matter. Even the rate of return is secondary. The only variable that dictates massive wealth creation is the length of the runway. Escaping the trap of a regular salary doesn't require you to find the next tech unicorn or gamble your life savings. It requires a clinical, unbroken adherence to the math of compounding over a very long timeline. The primary psychological barrier keeping people tied to a desk is capital. Most employees assume that starting a business requires putting their own cash on the line. Consider the Patel family. When they arrived in the United States as refugees from Uganda in the 1970s, they had absolutely zero capital and virtually no local skills that would secure a corporate job. They executed a flawless Donau strategy. They bought small motels using bank loans, moved their entire family into a couple of the rooms, and fired the existing staff. By eliminating the payroll and doing the cleaning and management themselves, they deeply undercut the nightly rates of every competitor in town. Today, this specific demographic makes up roughly 0.1% of the U.S. population. Yet, by repeating this zero capital blueprint, they now control 80% of all motels in the country. The exact same logic applies to scaling massive, high-stakes industries. When Richard Branson decided to start a transatlantic airline from scratch, he had no experience in aviation and no capital to buy aircraft. Instead of raising funds, he called the main directory assistance line for Boeing. He called repeatedly until he reached the leasing department, asking to borrow a used $150 million jumbo jet. Boeing eventually agreed to lease him the plane. From their perspective, the math was simple. If Branson's airline failed, they would simply repossess the idle aircraft. Neither party took on any actual downside. A lack of money is a convenient excuse. True entrepreneurial leverage isn't about raising venture capital. It is about structuring your deals so the downside is mathematically engineered to zero. This graphic illustrates the Lego time framework. It is a specific protocol for building an enterprise without shutting off your current cash flow. Out of a 168-hour week, the blue blocks represent your mandated 40 hours of corporate work. The orange blocks represent your free time. To execute this safely, you keep the blue blocks exactly where they are, performing just enough to keep your salary. but you entirely cannibalize the orange blocks. Every hour previously spent on social media or watching television turns bright yellow, reallocated exclusively to building your business. You now have the time and the capital strategy. The final barrier is the pressure to invent something entirely new. But society severely undervalues the sheer safety and profitability of simply copying what already works. Look closely at the wealthiest founders in history. They are rarely original innovators. They are, almost without exception, master cloners. Bill Gates did not invent the modern software industry from scratch. The entire Microsoft empire, from Word to Excel to Bing, was built by identifying competitor products that had already achieved market fit and copying them. Originality is largely a vanity metric. The safest, most clinical path to financial independence is to find a proven model and clone it within the reclaimed margins of your own schedule. The mechanics of escaping the 9-to-5 are a solved formula. It requires 0 original ideas, 0 personal capital, and 0 financial downside. But those yellow blocks of reallocated time are grueling. Working 10 extra hours a day on the weekends in complete isolation is an impossible routine to sustain if your only motivation is making money. This exposes the final, non-negotiable requirement of the entire blueprint. You must have a calling. You must have some specific output, your music, that you are desperate to deliver to the world. Without that intrinsic drive, the zero-risk framework cannot save you. The friction of the work will simply wear you down, and you will inevitably surrender back to the anesthetic comfort of a bi-weekly paycheck. The safety net of your excuses has been mathematically and historically dismantled. You cannot claim you lack the time, and you cannot claim you lack the funding. Now that the financial risk is demonstrably zero, what is your excuse for dying with your music still trapped inside you?